told that there are usually just a few people that come to the basics.
That's tomorrow.
Thank you all for showing up. Really happy to be here again. I see many dear friends, familiar people. And welcome to those who are here for the first time. I think there are quite a few on the floor. And a couple who are here for the first time.
Harder to get,
So, basics. That's a very interesting concept. I've been thinking about the basics for a few weeks now, knowing I was going to be meeting with you and talking and doing basics class. What do some of you think about when you think about basics? Gail, what do you think about basics?
Tone production.
Tone production,
Breathing.
breathing. Very good.
Humming.
Excellent. What else?
Embouchure.
Embouchure. Excellent.
Posture.
Posture.
Yeah, I like
Good.
to see the correct, I like the angle on the
Angle.
instrument, because I've got some students who go here, they
Right,
wrap themselves
right.
around it.
And if you're playing in an ensemble with a conductor, you want to see your music, but you want to be able to see, for better or for worse, you want to see the conductor. Anyone else?
How about efficient practice methods?
Efficient practice methods. Oh, excellent, and I must say, not reads, yeah,
Fingering.
fingering, right. So,
Breathing.
breathing, right, I think Gail may have mentioned that, excellent. So, I was expecting to hear things like, playing your scales, knowing your arpeggios, things that are kind of more technically oriented. Now, air, tone production, intonation, embouchure, these are elements of technique, but a different kind of technique. A lot of people consider that you use the term, well, I'm a nuts and bolts teacher. And I teach the scales, and I have some colleagues who say, well, so-and-so is a more fingers man, and someone else is an air-breathing lady. And they distinguish the difference between someone being more oriented with fingers and someone perhaps being more into the tone and the breathing, and the fact is, technique encompasses everything. It encompasses breathing, it encompasses long tones, scales, arpeggios, staccato, articulation. How many of you here are tennis fans? I know there's a gentleman back there who's a tennis fan. I mentioned it's a big week because it's in the midst of the French Open. And I was listening to an interview with Novak Djokovic, who's the #1 player. And he was asked about a change in his diet. And has that change in his diet affected his playing? Does he attribute some of his more recent, he's been first for #1 player for over a year, 2 years. Anyway, his answer was, well, my approach is a holistic approach. And everything I do in preparation is important. It's all part of a whole attitude in preparing for what I do. And I was very taken by that because when we, as musicians, what we do contains a package of many different things. All the stuff that you all mentioned: embouchure, tone, scales, posture. So it's very hard to say just what are, the basics really encompass a holistic approach to playing. Everything is important. Something that struck me last night during Lauren's fantastic class, one of the things he was commenting a lot about was not to start or play a full body tone at full expression, full dynamic, and just blurt it out. When we, I was trying some stuff in my room, and in my room it sounded fine. In this room, and it's a little more air conditioned, and it's a little bit flat. But one of the excerpts was the Beethoven Violin Concerto, and it's a fantastic piece. So many things in that concerto to pursue. It's actually, I think, one of the great things to play because each movement has a important passages, and all the things for bassoon in that concerto are almost a real solo because you're not competing with for projection. You're not competing over a full-bodied string section or brass. It's all so well written. It's as if the piece was written for solo violin with a little obligato for bassoon. But in the slow movement, in the middle second phrase of this, and what a lot of what we were hearing was a tendency to play not only much too loud, but at the fullest ability of our dynamic, in which you can't go any further. And so I realized that this is another element of basics, how we release the air, and learning the speed in which we release the air is also terribly important to the basics, the fundamentals of playing. And considering slowing down the speed in which you release the air becomes kind of an insight as to what potential we can get out of sound, expression, just slowing down. So if you all have a readout, why don't we just play a little bit, play a few notes, just to get your read set. And I'd like us to try, before we start into posture and technique and fingers and scales, let's just talk about the very first thing I think that Gail said was tone and air. So let's take these two notes, B natural to G, that interval for the Beethoven concerto. And let's play it really as loud as you feel you can play, just to see what that's going to be like. You'll come in on four. I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 1, 2, And. Good. Try once again. 1, 2, and. So we're talking about the third beat below. I hear a little bit the octave below. So let's try once again. 1, 2, and. Okay. Now let's try the same thing and really slow down the speed of the air. So the result of releasing the air slower, the dynamic is going to be what?
Soft.
Softer. Right. Let's try that. 1, 2, and. Really nice. What do you think about that expression when you slow down the speed? Let's try this side of the room first. Okay? Let's just do that. B, B, G, 2, 3. I hear now. Let's try this side first. 1, 2, and. So there's room to grow when you release the air at a slower speed, right? If you release the air very fast, you're up against your limit. You can't go any further. So we never want to be at a point where we feel we can't go any further, either with dynamic or even more than dynamic expression. One really great conductor once used the expression down on dynamic, up on expression. And so, what did you observe when you move the air at a slower speed? How did you feel about your tone quality? How did you feel about the pitch of the interval? The quality of the G?
Better control?
Better control. And you're much more within a zone of expression. You're not yes?
This is probably a stupid question, but
Nothing is.
is there, I'm thinking, is there a difference in like the amount of actual support you're giving in, into slowing the air down? Are you still really giving that hard support?
Well, suppose I'm stuck with my car and I ask a couple of you to give me a push. Are you going to stand about 15 feet behind the car and run up with all your might? Give it all you have. So you're putting in a lot of effort and you're running fast, lots of speed. Is there any positive result that's going to occur with that, or are you just going to hurt yourself? You're not going to get much result. But if you get up against the car, or let's say we want to move this piano to the other side of the room, again, we don't run up with all our might and move the piano. We're expending a lot of energy, but the result is nothing, no real result. Instead, we're getting up close, we're moving, how are we moving fast or slow? Slow, but we're getting results. So the effort, when we in order to move the air slowly, is more effort, more concentrated effort, more focus than if you are going to play loud and move the air quickly. How many like to go swimming? So, you know what it's like when you want to hang out a little bit under the water? You want to, maybe you're wearing goggles, maybe you're somewhere where there's nice shellfish or shells or fish, beautiful water. Maybe you're wearing goggles or just with your open eyes. In order to stay under for a duration, do we release the air fast or slow? Slow. We take a good breath and we use our discretion as to how we let it out, but we let it out at a slow speed. Now, when we let it out, while we're maintaining it, we're building up pressure. Sometimes we call it, in playing an instrument, we call it support. As opposed to take a good breath, you let it out without being compressed, without being consolidated. That's really not much support. But in order to let it out slowly, we need to control it, we need to build up pressure, and that we call support. And so, allowing the air to be released at a slower speed requires much more control, much more concentration, and a little more effort. And we're retaining the air longer so that if you're swimming underwater, you can stay a little bit longer before you have to come up, take another big breath, come down. If you release it quickly, you can't hang out too long. Now, generally speaking, in terms of basic stuff, what do you tend to find more difficult with the bassoon? Playing a fast passage or playing a slow passage?
Both.
Okay,
No, as they get older, the faster passages.
okay.
I mean, really
Getting
serious.
back to the package, both are important. But, depending on how you spend your time with the basics, most people will handle the fast passages a lot better than they will the slow passages, because they value a fast passage more than, they look at a slow passage, oh, that's not so difficult. Why isn't it difficult? Because you're not moving your fingers quickly. You're not tonguing quickly. You don't have a technical challenge. So you put it kind of on the back burner and you say, well, I'll get to that. You do the, how many really practice the second movement of the Mozart Bassoon Concerto? Or the second movement of the Weber, or a slow movement of a Vivaldi? But you spend we all spend a lot of time on the outer movements, right? The fast movements, the staccato, the arpeggios. We value that, or we interpret those as being more difficult. And so we shortchange the slow movements and all the technical aspects that make a slow movement easier to play. Taking a breath, spinning out the air at a slow speed that allows you to play a longer period of time, starting with a good attack, ending with a diminuendo, all requiring good control of our air. We say for another time. We're busy with the metronome, little by little, moving it up, Okay, now I can play it at 80, 84. Let's move it up to 88, 92, and it is an accomplishment. And those things are important, not to diminish the importance of the more technical oriented parts of playing. But the slower passages require also technique, but it's the kind of technique that doesn't give us a sense of immediate result. And we all like immediate result. And if you know you can play something at a tempo faster than when you first started, you feel you're getting better. And that's a great accomplishment. And you are getting better. No question about that. But then you decide to start tackling the slow movement, and you're not getting off the notes very quickly. You're holding on to a note for a longer time, which means you're able to hear better. The intonation, quality of the sound, and oh my goodness, this is not quite sounding so great. You need to work, and there are other issues that are not quite as immediately solved in slower music as in fast music. Just as playing louder is a little bit easier than playing softer. It's easy to make an attack that's louder, it's safe. How do we make an easier, a softer attack? It's a different part of technique. So, throughout the course of the week, I would like to focus on the what some people might consider not so much nuts and bolts, the finger digital aspect of playing, which we will do, but understanding not only how to incorporate our air control, but what the result is. It's kind of a revelation when you get some of the results of the air control. You feel not only that you're playing, you know, when we learn a passage and we can play it quickly, there's a sense of, oh, I'm moving along, you know, I'm getting to be better. I'm becoming a better bassoonist. When you're facing a piece of music that has just a simple attack on not necessarily a high D or a C in the Rider Spring or a B flat in the Bolero, but just a comfortable note, like let's see, just even in that beginning of that Beethoven concerto for the bassoons on that G. It's easier to go. Let the air go faster, play louder, but you've got a long ways to go. What you want to also understand is a kind of a concept. Every time you play, you want to have a point of view. And one of the things we tend to focus on are the mechanics of playing, and not so much the point of view of the music that we're playing. Reminds me of when I was learning how to drive. Growing up in a city, I didn't learn to drive until I was in my 20s. And I was taking my driver's test, and everything was going great. And as a good student that I was zoned into responding to direction from the teacher, from the instructor. So he tells me to, when I get to the corner, I want you to make a left turn. And I'm going down, and getting to the corner, and I start to make a left turn. And he puts on the brake at the passenger seat. And he said, "What happened?" And I said, "What do you mean?" "It's a red light." "Why are you going through the red light?" "Oh my God, you didn't tell me to stop." So, talk about concept, being able to understand, sort of what you're doing. If you have to, it's one thing, yeah, I mean, I wasn't a kid, I was in my 20s, but you can get so caught up in doing a particular functioning and functioning on direction that you forget to take on a certain initiative and partnership on your own. And as musicians at all different kinds of levels, there are two of you. One side of you is the performer playing the instrument, functioning on the instrument, and the other is using your judgment. And judgment is a very important part of basics. When you play, you want to have a judgment of, well, am I looking to play something very loud? Am I looking to play something soft? Am I looking for some growth? And you just don't want to be one-dimensional and kind of blank up here and just thinking about the functioning of the bassoon. So, partnership, whether you're studying with someone, whether you're teaching someone, you expect your students to take on some initiative too. And when you're playing, you're the performer, you're the athlete, you're the functioning bassoon player, but you're also an intelligent musician, thoughtful with a point of view, and you want to combine all of these things, which really make up part of one's basic stuff. Now, I remember when I first started to play professionally, I was listening to a trumpet player, first trumpet player, warming up, and this is what he was doing. Had a book on stand. 15 minutes on one note, attacks, and a little diminuendo at the end. I don't think he played anything technical, anything that was quick. A good 15-20 minutes, just making a clean attack. For a brass player, that's a very important basic thing. For every player, we have our reeds. And every day there little different, not only up here in the mountains, but all over every day at sea level, wherever we are. And so warming up for about 5 minutes, playing the tax, I would say would be a very important part of one's basic stuff. Should we try that? Where do we want to start the attack? Not necessarily an open F or a C. Let's try it right on A. Not a very comfortable note. Whether we flick, whether we press the key, whether we don't. Let's just play a mezzo forte attack for 4 beats on the tuning aid. Okay? 1, 2, ready. That's this side of the room, try it. Remember, you don't want to play at your maximum. Take a breath. You're going to let the air out slower or fast? A little bit slow. Let's try that. 3, and... Good. Let's try it again. Do it 4 times. 3, and... Okay. Let's try a little bit softer. Just a little bit. 3, and... Good. So let's divide this from here to you guys play this side. 3, and... Good. Let's sing it once. 3, and... Now let's play it. 3, and... Does that help? Sounds seem to be a little bit better. When you sing the note, you hear it. You're aware of your throat cavity. This side, you want to try? 3, and... Good. Make sure locks are not on and that the whisper key is open. Once again. That was pretty good. 3, and... Let's sing it once. 3, Good. So you see, when I talk about having a perception, having a point of view, without an instrument in your hands, you all have good instincts, you have a good point of view. The way you sang the note was beautiful. Right? Let's sing it one more time. Excellent. So think of that. Let's try and play it. Doesn't have to be quite that soft, but with that in mind. 3, and... Yes. Now, just for the heck of it, let's play it very loud. 3, and... Now let's go back to the first way. Softer, more refined. 3, and... Okay, not bad. Easy to play louder, right? Easy to get the note out. get the air going fast. So, do you want to keep on repeating what's easy? In order to move up, raise the bar, work on the things that are not quite as easy. Value a little bit softer dynamic. Be aware of moving the air at a slower speed. The results are, you see what the results are, much more sensitive, you have more control, and little by little, that becomes the norm. It won't be quite so awkward. Let's do it over here. So, half the room, this side here, have a comfortable dynamic. On, 3, and good, very, very good. Now, as we sustain at a softer dynamic, like swimming underwater and letting the air out, it's being let out slowly but with focus. Keep the embouchure, try to avoid biting. Trust that the air will keep the pitch and in that octave very focused. Once again, this side of the room, 3, and now let's sing a little bit softer first. 3, and sing it. Right. So when we sing softer, it's not we're just sort of using our throat and nothing below. When we sing softer, we're going to go. Okay, so let's sing it one more time. 3. We're going to sing. Good. Now let's play. Very, very good. 3. Not bad at all. Very good. Let's try this side. How does it feel to get that? It's a nice feeling. It says, oh, I can do this. This is an accomplishment. So don't revert back to playing louder and warming up and seeing how loud. You can play loud. Everybody can do that. So this side, comfortably first, 3, and very, very good for a bunch of a group of several bassoons with really nice pitch. Let's sing it now a little bit softer. And excellent. Let's play it now, just like that. Breathe and hold it. Okay. So when you're warming up, something I said last time I remembered, maybe some of you who were here might remember that. I asked you all, I picked at random individuals to play a little warm-up. Does any of you who were here remember that? Okay. 99% of you who, when asked to play a warm-up, did not play anything above an open F. Their warm-up consisted of everything, low B flats, low Fs, everything in the low register, and then eventually they may have found their way up. In notice I asked you to play this tuning aid. I feel very strongly that when a person has a good mid and upper register, the low register will fall into place, and your low register will improve. But if you focus on the lower register, whether it's warming up, whether it's doodling and just, playing lots of low notes, and I understand why low notes are on our minds, because getting a low note to speak is an issue with our instrument. It could be the instrument, it could be the reed, low notes on big instruments, on bass instruments, are, concern. On the other hand, the beauty and the challenge of a bass instrument is how they play the mid and the tenor and upper register. And if you look at a number of what people are asking you to play in the classes, just last night, for example, there was the beginning of the Beethoven first movement, scale-wise. But the last movement, all that kind of tenor register, upper tenor register. And yet, we tend to focus and start our warm-ups with that kind of mid and low register. So, let's see if we can find more value and a little bit more patience in our warm-ups, in our early playing, to start quietly and slowly from about A up above, and not think about the low Fs and the low Cs and B flats until a little later. So let's everybody just try that tuning A once again. Does anyone remember the page? Good. Let's try it. So the reason why it's so important to hear that is, unlike a keyboard, where you can have a telephone conversation, or you're adjusting something in a pot on the stove, you can play the note and it's going to come out without too much thinking about it. But on an instrument like ours, and most any other instrument, you have to be involved in it 100%. And that means hearing the note, having it in your system, hearing it before you take your breath, so that your breath tells you what you want to hear. Let's try that. And let's now play the octave below. Same dynamic. Very, very good. Be careful once you get it, not to speed up the air speed. Once again, keep it going. Let's go the next octave, the note we were playing before, one octave above, second A, and slowly, and okay, very, very good. So, slow playing and these intervals, it makes you much more familiar and with the neighborhood of the different registers on the bassoon. And it's a little bit like I often use as an example. If you wake up in the middle of the night at your home and the lights are out, you need to go to the bathroom, you need to get a glass of water, you know your way around your home. You could manage without turning on a light or a flashlight. But if you go to visit a friend and you wake up in the middle of the night, you're not going to be so comfortable. You need a light. You may bang yourself, you might walk into a door. You want the whole nature of your instrument to be as familiar to you as your own home. And a certain amount of repetition will allow for that. Lots of practice, years of playing, you become familiar where I would like to kind of focus. You see the difference between the second A and the top A, different neighborhood, different, we have another part of basics is the fact of a kind of elasticity with our breathing. Put your hand on your throat for a moment, and let's sing A, little A, like that. Let's sing the octave above. I can't even sing it. But you see what happens. It's a different neighborhood. You can't use the same position for the high A as you do for the octave above. Let's sing the middle A again. Now let's go down an octave. Again, a different position. And that's accompanied by adjusting with our air. So technique and basics is to be as familiar with the neighborhoods of our instrument as we are with how to play note-wise an F sharp major scale or a B flat minor scale. Anything from a mechanical thing, you feel greater, B flat minor, harmonic, melodic, you name it, natural, I'll play them all. That's great, that's part of basics too, to know what are scales and arpeggios. But to value something that's a little bit more reflective, that doesn't give you on a chart of improvement this immediate increase in your numbers, focusing on things like position of notes, the neighborhoods, the breathing, the slow release of air. All right. Any questions about that? Yes?
So just to clarify, your warm-up, the whole time you're in the orchestra, starts at tuning note A and above. You like to start with that first.
Well, I feel, now, when you have things to do, if you're doing a concert, you're playing repertoire, and you may very well want to focus on something that you're playing. But when we're practicing and we're talking about basics, basics, not necessarily tackling the assignment. Basics are the kinds of things that you have for the rest of your life. When you when you improve and you get better and better, whether with reed making, with all kinds of things, you start experimenting. Oh, I love the way this person played. I'm going to try what they did with their reeds, or with, and you kind of go off a little bit from your normal your basics. That's what basics do. Whether it's in life, you hope that you are brought up with some good basics that allow you to be independent. Now, a thoughtful, open-minded person may begin, oh, gee, I never experienced this, or that person has an interesting point of view, and you might go a little bit off in a different direction. Well, not quite for me, or maybe you kind of deviate a little. You need to get back on. As a musician, we're always having to come back to a center stability, our basics. So, yes, I feel that practicing, starting pretty much on a G or that A, it doesn't have to be the A, but avoiding immediately valuing the low notes, because I think that will inhibit some of the importance of the upper register. A good upper register will enhance a low register. A good upper register requires a little bit more embouchure. It's always easier to go from a little tighter to more open, rather than starting more open and being tighter. When we play the upper register, the tenor register, you want to play the bolero, that's an extended solo. It's not just 2 or 3 notes. So you want to be able to, if you don't want to be biting and to play espressivo. If you play Tchaikovsky fourth, and again an extended solo, you want that reed to just kind of float. But being the tenor or upper register, you're going to use a little bit more focus in the upper register, because the resistance is different. So you're going to use a little bit more focus on your embouchure. If you spend most of your time in getting those low notes out with a little bit more open embouchure, then when you have to change and go not to the stratosphere, not to the extreme of the bassoon, but just that basic tenor register, B, G, and the Beethoven. That's not very high, but it's the more tenor register. Then you find yourself needing to use more tension, more bite and so starting out with a stronger embouchure, loosening up, I think is more valuable than starting with too weak or too loose an embouchure and then having to get tighter when you're playing. And so much of what we do play is in that register. So before we leave, let's turn the tables a little bit and I want to talk about rhythm. One thing I like to do in practicing the more nuts and bolts type of stuff, like scales, I'd like to start with a slow tempo but I'd like to play in different rhythmic patterns. So let's play a simple C major scale. It's about 2 minutes after. Do you have maybe 2 or 3 minutes before we begin? Some people have one of the important things with basics too is being flexible and being accurate in rhythmic changes, going from duples to triplets to sixteenths, and not being approximate, but being really accurate. So let's take a C major scale for just a moment. Let's just play the second C to the octave above, one octave, like this in eighth notes. Bum, 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 bum. Okay? 3 and 4 and. Okay, good. Okay, let's do it legato and C to C. Okay? 3 and 4 and. Slow down the speed. Down. Let's bring the dynamic down a little bit. Good breath. Let the air out a little bit. Slow. Ready and. Yes. Get louder. Triplets. Triplets. Triplets will go up to D and then turn around. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Again, you're getting from big sound and louder. Down on dynamic, up on what? Expression. Tone quality, expression, espressivo. 1, 2, 3, ready, and. Sixteenth notes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again, without slowing down. 1, 2, 3, 4, ready, and. With the 16th notes, we can just go up to the C. Not the D, once again. Remember, I talked a lot today. Let's try to remember. Slow the speed. Slower air speed, more concentration and sound. Once again, and. Okay, so now let's go back to triplets. This time to D. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. So, I just chose this comfortable octave, this comfortable key, but in terms of becoming as familiar on the bassoon as you are in your own home, let's see if we can try to achieve some of that throughout our stay here. When you practice a scale, don't practice necessarily from the tonic to tonic. You want to know the whole neighborhood of your instrument. So in C major, where should we begin the C major scale? low B, the lowest note on the bassoon in that key. And let's go and then go up to what's comfortable for you. High C, maybe high D. In eighth notes, triplets, 16th notes. Maybe quintuplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sextuplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 notes could be either two groups of 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or one group or 3 groups of 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Same amount, the same beat, but a slightly different phrase. Okay, so that's C major. Then I would play every single note where there is a B flat or A sharp. B major. Where do you want to start B major? A sharp. All right? Okay. Do as many, go up the scale from B flat, B natural, B natural, B major scale. You're going to start on A sharp. C major scale, start on B. C sharp major scale, start on A sharp. A sharp, etc., etc. And so here in your scales, there you want to know the whole register of the bassoon. So we're going to start on the low, and we're going to go as high as we comfortably can. With a metronome going, the reason why I say a slow beat, like 58, 54, is that then you can comfortably play sextuplets, not having to slow down. When you can comfortably play the 16th notes, quintuplets, sextuplets, phrasing the sextuplets different ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. In music, you have music that's and you have music that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same amount of notes, but different music. So you become an active participant in your creative growth as a player. And all of these things, mind you, are without anything printed. But they allow you to use your imagination with what are considered basics. As much as I'm leaving it for the end of this class, scales, arpeggios, knowing your basic stuff, knowing the instrument, in addition to the breathing and the upper register, the scales and the whole register is very important. So be creative. Be as Novak Djokovic said. It's a holistic approach to improvement. It's not just well, I know my scales, and I can play at this dynamic, and I can do the. It's the quality of the more insightful, the more demands you, the more you seek inside of yourself as a musician. I asked you to sing that A, and you all sang it very beautifully, because you are all innately musical, and you want that your innate musicality to be part of your intelligence and your growth as a player. Not like me, where I'm taking my driver's test, and because the guy told me, hey, there's a red light, he didn't tell me because he assumed I would know. As an adult has gotten as far as taking a driver's test, gotta stop. So, find the stuff inside yourself, and we'll continue next time. Thank you.